Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. I'm Nancy Solomon. Yesterday was the governor's annual State of the State address, which lays out his agenda for the coming year. We'll talk about that this evening, and we'll take your calls. This is your chance to speak directly with the governor. Call us at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. What would you like to see the governor do to make New Jersey more affordable? Do you think affluent suburban towns should be required to build affordable housing? We'll also be taking your questions via social media using the hashtag AskGovMurphy. The number again, 844-745-TALK. And we're joined now live by Governor Phil Murphy. Good evening.
Nancy, nice to be here. Let's commit to no hot mics tonight, please.
Yes, that is a reference to your predecessor, Chris Christie, who bowed out of the presidential race tonight and accidentally spoke into a live mic, throwing Nikki Haley under the bus.
Yes.
So, but we're not going to talk about so much that tonight. But, well, I'm pleased that it's not raining out and that it was not too difficult to get here. But I know you barely got here in time because you were up in Lodi.
Yeah.
What, that's in Passaic County? Do I have the county right?
You're almost right.
Bergen
County.
Okay.
And I'll be in Little Falls tomorrow. And frankly, I could go to 20 communities given the flooding. We had this very intense event last night. But as we've said many times, these events are coming more frequently with more intensity. And this is really the third event inside of 3 weeks. And the ground is saturated. In some places, you had packed in snow. And then you got what you got last night. And you got flooding. In fact, in some places, the rivers have not yet crested. The Passaic River is not yet crested. I just got louder. Did I get louder with you as well?
Yeah, but that's okay.
Something happened there.
We're under control.
Okay. And in any event, this is, again, these things are becoming more frequent, more intense. And folks, even though it's not raining out there, if you're living near the Passaic River at least, and there may well be other rivers that have not yet crested, please stay safe. We've got another event coming Friday night into Saturday, which looks like rain again. And then next Tuesday looks like a wintry mix of snow and rain. So we're in one of those cycles right now.
So what were you looking at tonight? Are people's homes flooded, or they're just waiting for the river to crest and they may get flooded? What's the situation?
In Lodi, the Saddle River has already crested, and there is a significant amount of impact on homes. I spoke to a mom and her adult daughter, who were living right on the river. What I went specifically to see, a container, think of the back of a tractor trailer, was in the parking lot of the Boys Club, which I had seen 3 years ago when it flooded. The container, folks wonder whether or not, even if they're in a big SUV, does water have power? This enormous container got shifted into the river, floated down the Saddle River, including around a fairly sharp bend, and slammed into the side of a bridge. So there were probably 20 workers trying to figure out how to get that raised and put on the bridge on a flatbed truck. Thank God, no injuries. And by the way, statewide, to the best of our knowledge, no deaths and no injuries from this storm over the past 24 hours, which is thank God, and also a minor miracle.
So sticking with the flooding for a moment, I understand that the state has $10 million in federal funding that is meant to, what's being done to ameliorate the increase in floods that we're seeing?
So you're right. We did announce a few days ago, before this storm, that we were able to cobble together what we think is plus or minus 10 million. We're going to have to look at that number to see if we can get more. FEMA has the feds is another obvious source. They have a higher hurdle, so you've got to qualify at a higher level of damage, whether you're a homeowner or you're a town. So it's whether it's state money or more likely federal money. The other thing that is concerning in Lodi, and it's not just Lodi, but certainly Lodi, there's been an Army Corps of Engineers proposal to dredge that's been sitting there since 1986.
Oh, wow.
And it used to be, the county executive told me tonight, the river in Lodi, the Saddle River that goes through Lodi, used to have a 14-foot depth. And now, due to silt and other reasons, it's 7 feet. So it's a lot easier, sadly, to flood. And so we're doing our level best to get that unlocked and on the rails. We're doing a lot in the state. I feel really proud of a lot of the mitigation and resilience stuff. But at the end of the day, the feds need to be playing a big role. The Inflation Reduction Act will be a game changer, but that's a 10-year horizon. It's not going to help that mom and her daughter in Lodi tonight.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the state of the state. Congratulations on your sixth one of those.
Yeah.
Before we get into the details of what you're proposing in the coming year, let's just pull the curtain back a bit. Like, what is this like for you? Like, do you get nervous about a speech like that, or do you give so many speeches now that it's kind of old hat, or
Well,
what's it like?
First of all, it's special. It's probably one of the most special parts of this job because you go into a chamber, it's packed. You get a really good reception from both Republicans and Democrats, not on every particular issue, but the sort of general stuff when you walk in, when you walk out. The entirety of the Supreme Court was there. 3 former governors, former lieutenant governor, my wife, and 3 of our 4 kids. Pretty special. So it's hard to understate how special it is. We work on it for many weeks. And it's in the budget speech, and I guess an inaugural speech, of which I don't have any more in my tank, are the ones that I spend the most time on. They're delivered off a teleprompter, so you got to make sure you're getting that right, because if you're not used to that, that can trip you up. I've learned over the years to like that format, and you've got to be able to realize that the room wants to applaud. We had a couple of gut-wrenching moments acknowledging Sheila Oliver and Joe Fiordaliso, acknowledging my former colleague Louisa Carmen, who was killed on New Year's Day in a car crash. So you also want to get a sense of the emotion of the room. Never be too proud to make off-the-cuff comments and live or die with the reactions. So that's kind of fun. I wouldn't say nervous. That I'm not making light of it, but it's not giving speeches. Maybe it's because I used to act when I was in high school and college. It's that part of it has not really ever been, whether they're good or not, whether or not I deliver them well or not is a separate point. But I'm not nervous walking in there, but it's pretty special.
Who do you see as the primary audience for the state of the state?
It's a great question, because I always think about, where do I put my eyes? Because you've got in front of you, other than the special guests, you've got the legislators. And obviously you got to work with the legislators, and I do so happily. And then you've got rafters, which are filled with advocates, cabinet members, senior staff, union folks, some special guests I recognize. But then right in front of you, about 40 feet in front of me, is one camera. And that camera is the feed. And that's the feed through which New Jerseyan is watching that speech. So they're all important, but I'd say the most important is the one right down the barrel from me. And so no audience, no segment of that audience is unimportant. But at the end of the day, we work for the 9.3 million residents of the state.
So I have a lot of questions about things that I thought were significant that I'm going to ask you about, but I'm kind of curious, what single item in this speech was most important to you or was most exciting to you?
I'd say, don't be mad at me for giving you a couple, but I think affordability screams out, and that we talked about in a number of different ways: affording childcare through free of charge universal pre-K, healthcare, the Louisa Carmen Act, which I announced, which is preventing people from getting into medical debt, making homes more affordable and getting more affordable housing. So affordability, affording college, that's one huge theme. I'd say, and that includes medical debt and all the things I just talked about. Second one would be rights and freedoms, particularly reproductive rights, voting rights, gun safety, the stuff that I think increasingly distinguishes the state. And I'd say thirdly, one that probably folks may not have seen coming, which is generative artificial intelligence, which I think is going to be a huge game changer in our lives, but I think New Jersey can play a pretty unique, existentially important role. So I'd say that affordability in all of its ways, rights and freedoms, and then where are we going next? And not just our economy, because I think it's a mistake to think of AI as just a technology or just a economic development matter. This is going to be transformative in all of our lives. So I'd say those are three pillars that I'd point to.
Well,
How's that match up with yours?
I'm very happy to say, with one or two minor exceptions, those are precisely the things I want to ask you about
Oh,
tonight.
good.
But before we do that, we do have folks waiting to ask you questions who are on the line. So
Okay.
let's take a call. We have Mark from Highland Park on the line.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Governor, how are you?
Great. How about you?
I'm okay. Thank you so much. So
I
am
can't
a
hear you
fan of
terribly
yours.
well, though.
Now, can you?
Yeah, that's a little bit better. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So I have this concept about immigration and refugees that is it possible to give homeowners a tax credit if they take them into their home? Now, the idea kind of came from Churchill when he was in a bind at the port of Dunkirk. It was called Operation Dynamo. And he had to evacuate 340,000 soldiers, British, French, and Belgium. And he relied on small, tiny boats to evacuate them.
I remember it well.
So, yeah, there you go. So, my wife and I have been involved and our children in helping refugees and immigrants. We live across the street from the Reformed Church of Highland Park, Seth Copperdale, and he does a great job, but there's only so much that he can do. But if there was an incentive for residents to take refugees and immigrants into their home, I think that we'd be surprised at how many people will step up to the plate.
It's a very intriguing notion. By the way, I've had the honor of being in Seth's church during the Trump administration, where they were chasing after residents who did not have status when they were like dropping their kids off at school. You'll remember you and I talked about that, Nancy. This is back in 2018, as I recall. Listen, I'm intrigued. It's a very interesting idea. We've had a lot of one-offs in my time as governor. Probably Ukrainian would be the biggest in the refugee column. There have been these buses that have been coming through New Jersey over the past week or so, which seems to have slowed down. We should talk about that. Some small percentage of those folks are getting off and being met by family or friends. We actually don't know what their ultimate destination is, whether it's Jersey or not. I don't know. The Afghanistan refugee situation was much more of a big scale coordinated activity. Some of those refugees remained in New Jersey from the Joint Base. I'm not sure it was a big number. My guess is probably in the 1,000-person range. Listen, I'm intrigued by it. I'm familiar historically with what Churchill did. The Germans, to some extent, have done this with the Syrian refugees in 2015 and to some extent with the Ukrainians 2 years ago. I think there were some tax credits or incentives involved in that. I'm not 100% sure. But Jen Sciortino is with me. Jen, maybe we'll get Dennis Seveloff to follow up with Mark, who's our head of policy. I'm intrigued, Mark. The short answer is I'm intrigued by it.
So let's follow up and talk about, so the Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been sending,
bless his heart,
busloads of migrants. And, I think the point that he and other Southern governors are trying to make is that they shouldn't be the only states faced with the burden of housing and providing services to refugees and asylum seekers wanting to come to this country. I mean, is that reasonable on their part? Like, they're basically saying, we're not the only ones taking folks from over the border. All states should be dealing with this.
Yeah, I mean, at the very highest level, yes. But the way they're doing it and the political gamesmanship in using these folks as pawns is completely unacceptable and I think un-American. Now, step back for a second. Do we need comprehensive immigration reform in this country? Please God, yes. We've needed it for a long time. I remember George W. Bush and John McCain were trying to advocate for this. You'll recall when Bush was president, and we came close. We need and there are three legs to the stool, and we all know that what those legs are. One is securing the borders in a humane, responsible, 21st century way, but securing them. Secondly, a pathway for the folks, the many millions who are already here, to achieve status. And then thirdly, to have a smart 21st century pro-jobs, pro-economy, pro-skill, humane legal immigration system. That's been sitting in front of us at the NGA when I was the chair of the National Governors Association. We started a ball moving on that. That continues. I'm happy to say, with both Republican and Democratic governors. So conceptually, yes, but I think this is political gamesmanship. Now, what we did, we're coordinating quite closely with New York. I've been on with Kathy Hochul, the governor, and Eric Adams, the mayor, and their teams. They took action against these bus companies as a legal matter. We have sent a strong letter to these bus companies, leaving all of our options on the table. I think it's too early to tell, but these went from 4 to 8 buses a day down to, it feels like one, and maybe when I'm not even sure one came in this morning. Maybe one came in. So we'll see if it's had an impact. And part of the reason we took that action is we heard, they were unscheduled, no notice, and the treatment of these people on these buses. Somebody told me in a 36-hour drive, they stopped for 5 minutes, which is inhumane. So enough already. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Do you think that New Jersey should be doing more to help with the crisis that's going on in New York right now? I mean, New York has been flooded with migrants, and they're providing emergency shelter and services and education. And shouldn't New Jersey be doing more?
Well, I mean, New York asked us 2 favors, basically, and they're both reasonable. By the way, when these folks get on the bus in Texas, they're told in Spanish that their asylum hearing is in New York City. That's what they're told, which is why people ask, well, and by the way, their NJ Transit fare must be paid by somebody. It isn't by me. So they know their destination is New York City. The 2 favors Eric and Kathy both asked, which I thought were very reasonable, and we have great relations with each of them, is number one, we were implying early on a week or so ago that New York was awash in federal resources. We had none. We were not a designated destination point. And their very fair point, and we've changed that, is that New York we have no federal resources. They do have federal resources, but they clearly don't have nearly enough. And that's a point that I have to underscore. And thirdly, they asked us if we could look at taking some kind of action against the bus companies, which we were going to do in any event. So the answer is, right now, I think if you ask New York, they would say, you know what, Jersey's cooperating. It's a close operation. The bigger thing is, enough of the political stunts. Let's get adults at the table from both parties and figure this out. And if all this weren't bad enough, we're starving Ukraine of money as a result of this, of lack of a border deal against a Russian aggressor. And by the way, anybody out there who thinks Ukraine is the last stop on the Russian aggression train, they ain't read their history books. Mm-hmm. So that makes this even worse.
Okay. Let's go to WHYY's Kenneth Burns, who's been looking at social media and taking questions.
Kenneth Burns, Governor.
The Kenneth Burns.
We actually have this one from Jim in Longview, Texas. He wants to know, what advice would you give governors of states to solve the issue, talking about migrants, satisfactory for all?
My mistake, because we're going to take a break. So
I'll answer it during the break.
Yeah, we'll come back and we will definitely get an answer from you. But we need to take that 1-minute break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
I'm Nancy Solomon, and we're live with Governor Phil Murphy and Kenny Burns from WHYY. Give us a quick recap of that question from social media, please.
So the question came from Jim in Texas. He wants to know, what advice would you give governors to solve the issue of migrants satisfactory for all?
Yeah, I think this is, we were saying during the commercial break, first question we've ever gotten from the state of Texas. So we got to just mark that moment. I think it's two things I've already said, Kenny. Number one, there's a deal there. We need Congress to act and get that deal done. And let's everybody stop playing politics with this. And secondly, I want to give a shout out to governors, both Republican and Democratic. So right now, the chair of the National Governors Association is Spencer Cox, Republican of Utah. He and his vice chair, Democrat Jared Polis of the state of Colorado, have convened a bipartisan group of governors to try to lean into this and basically, I'm not sure I'd say force Congress's hands, but basically say, this is the template. This is how we get this done. And we've focused a lot on the border, as we should. We've focused less, but still a lot on the millions, 15 or more million folks who are here who have no status. We've focused less on that third leg. And there's an anecdote, I can't remember if I've said it on the show or not, which is a smart 21st century pro-jobs, pro-economy, skills, humane immigration system. Back when I was chair of the National Governors Association, maybe about a year ago, we convened a discussion with the Business Roundtable, and we weren't sure how serious they were about this. We were pretty serious. Kevin Stitt, Republican of Oklahoma, and I got on the call from the governor's side, and who's speaking on behalf of the Business Roundtable but Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. And he had about 20 other CEOs on there, and each one was more, as impressive as the next. So that third leg, we're starving, particularly in the high-skilled innovation space in the economy. So from so many reasons, we got to get this solved. That's my advice to our friend in Texas.
Okay, well, let's go back to the phones. We have Liz from South Bound Brook on the line. Liz, are you there?
Hey, Liz.
Hi, I'm here. Hello, Governor Murphy.
Hey, Liz,
I have
let
a
me ask you,
question regarding.
I was wondering, did you get any flooding in your house?
My house, no, I'm lucky. I actually live in a townhouse complex, and they're pretty good on the flooding. It's relatively newly built.
Good.
But
Good
my
to hear.
neighbors aren't so lucky.
Oh, boy. Please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So my question is ownership and affordability for young families in New Jersey. I'm 28. I'm about to get married and about to start thinking about having a family. But it's kind of difficult for young folks in New Jersey to find a place that's affordable or will give them the opportunity to save some money or what would be considered a starter home. Renting is challenging, and finding something that's 3 bedrooms or more to rent is almost impossible, unheard of.
Yep.
So what are you doing regarding making it easier to start a family in New Jersey?
Yep. First of all, congratulations, and wish you nothing but the very best. And we continue to be the #1 state in America in that specific category of folks who want to come here to raise a family and God willing, stay here. And I mentioned this in my State of the State address, which Nancy saw, which is there's good news and challenging news. Good news is New Jersey is popular. People are coming in. I mentioned the statistic from New York to New Jersey over the past 2 years, 3rd highest one state to another state move in the country. So good news is people are coming in. But if population is up and housing stock is flat, it's completely untenable. and the dream of home ownership for you and your future partner, spouse rather, is out of reach, and that's unacceptable. So we have to build a whole lot more units, which we're committed to doing. The gap right now, particularly at the affordable housing end, is 200,000 to 300,000 units over the next balance of this decade. That's an incredible number when you think about it. There's a bill that would allow this to happen more easily and more equitably, which we support conceptually. We have a first-time homeowners fund, which has been a game changer. Jen, if we could get down, I don't want to only go to Dennis tonight, but Dennis Zebeloff, Liz, if I could ask you to take a call from our head of policy. There are more steps that we've taken, but those are a handful of them. And we're committed to building more, especially in places that make sense, near your job, transit hubs, near main streets, logical places that respect the environment on the one hand, but also address the shortage of housing stock on the other hand. And so that's a quick summary. We're also trying to make life better for you as you start that family in ways that aren't housing specific, healthcare, medical costs, pre-K, to pick a few examples, which may not be directly on helping you better afford your house, but indirectly would help you do that. So I wish you the best. We'll ask Dennis to give you a shout and go through a list that it's a longer list and go through some more of the stuff.
Liz, thanks for your call. Let me follow up. So New Jersey was home to a landmark state Supreme Court decision, the Mount Laurel decision, that basically mandated towns to include affordable housing in their development plans.
Yep.
And I know that that system is currently, there's a proposal to overhaul it. Why hasn't that worked? And what is it that we need, what needs to happen differently than what's been happening for, what's it been, 30 years or so?
Yeah, or more actually. I was with Adam Gordon of Fair Share Housing after my speech yesterday. It's a great organization, but they've had to do this one town at a time through the courts. And so this bill that didn't quite get there, but I'm hoping it does, because I don't talk, as you know, about specifics, but as a conceptual matter, we like the direction it was going, because it would have made the building out of the housing stock, the affordable housing stock going forward, much more, as I mentioned to Liz, much more efficient, much more straightforward, and equitably. So not just speed, but also equitably. And it felt like it had support from all different angles, which is a rare moment.
So let me ask, so what happens then is that Fair Share Housing has to fight in court town by town by town when, say, a Maplewood doesn't, build some new housing but doesn't include affordable housing, then they have to go after that town.
Right.
And so what would the bill do that would make this streamlined so that it would be for the whole state?
Without getting into the weeds on it, it would take it out of the courts, and there would be a process that would be not through courts, but through a separate process with the different parties at the table. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen. So the folks out there should know we're not talking about something that happened, but it felt like, and I think our team who are listening, I think they would agree with my assessment that we made a lot of progress on this, and it got close, which gives me some, I don't want to speak for the legislature, gives me a lot of optimism, some, if not a lot of optimism, that we may see that get done in the not too distant future.
Okay. Let's go back to the calls. We have Justin from Harrison on the line.
Hey, Justin.
Wow. Hi. Thanks so much for taking my call. Governor Murphy, I'm so excited to talk to you. So I'm African American, and I work in sustainability in the semiconductor industry. There are not many of us, not many African Americans in this industry, not enough women, not enough minorities in general. And given that there's CHIPS and Science Act money floating around out there, and the work I do, I hear a lot about Ohio and Arizona and California and Texas, and not so much New Jersey. So I'm wondering what the administration, what your thinking is in terms of drawing in CHIPS and Science Act money or just semiconductor industry money to the state. So that's the first part of it. And the second piece is in terms of preparing young people, especially from Black and Brown communities, to be ready for technology, jobs, 21st century workforce. What you're thinking around that is too, and finally, like, did your trip to Asia, to in Taiwan and Japan, did that help drum up some interest in terms of investing in our state?
Yeah, all good questions. And those are three big ones. So I'm going to go quickly, or Nancy will step on my foot here or something, or Kenny or someone. The answer is we went to Japan, South Korea, Taiwan. The answer is emphatically it drummed up business. And I would say almost exclusively in the innovation economy, and even more specifically in generative artificial intelligence. Princeton signed a big MU. We had 7 institutions of higher ed from Jersey with us. Princeton, to pick one, signed a big MOU in South Korea that will have a huge impact. So we've done these trade missions to about 6 or 7 countries, and each one of them have paid big dividends. New Jersey sells really well globally. It's an international state that's known internationally. Secondly, amen, not enough diversity, gender, racial, any kind of diversity in the technology/innovation economy. We're doing a lot to try to push back on that, including affordability and accessibility to a higher ed degree. And when you do anything on affordability or accessibility, it has a disproportionately positive impact on communities of color. These P-Tech high schools, we've got a bunch of different programs that we're all in on, but the lack of diversity is, and you know this better than I do, Justin. You live in the industry, is absolutely shocking. So it is something we're pushing on, but we have a long way to go. If you care about talent and location and the innovation ecosystem, we're high on the list of any company that's looking to make plant a flag on a investment. Where we are less good, we're the 4th smallest state geographically, and energy prices are challenging in the Northeast relative to some other states. So when you combine, you look at Ohio, Texas, Arizona. I mean, I want those plants here. Let there be no doubt about it. But those big chip fab plants where you need 2,000 or 3,000 acres and you need enormous amounts of energy, we're probably not going to be as competitive as if it is a talent specific industry where it's basically you're hiring high-end, skilled, highly paid individuals. More often than not, to pick a tech example, not entirely, there's going to be one big exception in the software side as opposed to the hardware side. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to separate ourselves as it relates to generative artificial intelligence on that particular point. We've got a big AI hardware infrastructure company already in New Jersey. They're expanding. That's going to be probably the one sliver, Justin, in the tech business where we're going to be willing to place big bets because we think the impact is so potentially huge.
Thanks for your call, Justin. So yesterday, when you spoke about artificial intelligence in the State of the State address, you were very enthusiastic. It was clear that this is something that you truly believe in, that is going to be part of the economic future of the state.
And part of our society more broadly. So not just a technology, but that's why I was calling it a realm as opposed to a technology, because I think it's bigger than that.
So speak to people maybe who are like me and find it a little frightening.
Yeah. In fact, I did that in the speech because you hear that's real.
So convince those folks that this is something worthy of New Jersey's tax dollars, that we should be investing in this industry.
So I'd say a couple of things. Fears. Where do the fears come from? I think there are 2 types of fears. One is I'm going to lose my job. And there's been an enormous amount of discussion, research, scholarly work around that. I'm going to lose my job. The second one is the world's going to end. And And so
I subscribe to both of those opinions.
yeah, so those are the first one's a big one. I'd say the second one is probably even bigger because we'll all lose our jobs in that scenario. And so let me just say that, put that aside. So I don't want to be I want to be completely unvarnished about those are the two big fears that you hear the most. Let me say separately, this is happening.
Yeah, it sure is.
Whether we like it or not. The Chinese, or the People's Republic of China in particular, is all in on trying to dominate this realm. So in a world, even with those fears, in a world where the book really isn't written, the Bay Area in Northern California is really ground zero in the United States and arguably globally right now. The Chinese and others are trying like heck to get out ahead of us. There's no reason when you look at what we have in New Jersey that we can't be one of the authors of the future of this realm. So while the fears, I'm not going to deny that the fears exist, the former much more tangible, i.e. it could cost me my job versus the world's going to end, please God, that is a de minimis probability. So what I laid out lastly in our vision in the speech yesterday is to essentially upskill jobs and not eliminate them. So talking about incredible opportunities to cure disease and other steps that we take in the healthcare realm, that actually upskills workers in that industry, that we deal with climate change much more effectively. It creates jobs, not eliminates them. That we can do game-changing, highly tailored. Ken comes in with the following exact pedagogical needs in his senior year in high school, and you could tailor it exactly to what, but you, by doing so, uplift the educator as opposed to eliminate the educator. What I've just said is what we are entirely committed to. I'm not sure everybody is. We are in Jersey. So my plea to folks is this is happening. Not everybody is entering this with the same set of values as we have. Let's all get behind the good guys, quote unquote, being the ones who author this realm, and not folks who either don't care about jobs, don't care about you, me, Ken, maybe have sinister nationalistic objectives to it. Let's be the ones who take the high road here. That's my pitch.
Could that be Kathy Hochul in New York?
Well, Kathy, ironically, the day before, no.
I know. Well, she talked about
Literally,
AI yesterday as well.
Yes, exactly. No, I mean, that's a great example. I'll give you a fascinating statistic. I mentioned the Bay Area. A friend of mine who's not in government, who is a macro consultant, came up with the following statistics. Venture capital into generative artificial intelligence. People say generative. What's that mean, by the way? Artificial intelligence has been around a long time. Siri is artificial intelligence. Generative is taking all these inputs and writing your college thesis.
Mm-hmm.
$23 billion of venture capital into the Bay Area. Next one, number 2, New York City, $1 billion. So I actually think why do I say that? I think there's a lot this region can dominate. I really think I see it Jersey first, but I see a lot in common that we can work on with New York.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Or pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
I'm Nancy Solomon, and we're live with Governor Phil Murphy. So let's go right to Ken Burns, WHYY reporter, who's looking at social questions. What do you have for us?
D. Ken Burns.
So I'm a Ken Burns. Anyway. Let's talk about what was not mentioned in the speech yesterday. Kay in South Orange wants to know, what are you doing to improve transit service in New Jersey?
Oh, Jesus.
She writes, you didn't even mention NJ Transit in your speech yesterday. Meanwhile, you are fighting New York's congestion pricing program, which I support because it will help my transit commute into the city.
Boy, I'd like to know how she sees that.
The MTA. I mean, many of us who take the train then get onto the subway.
Once she's in the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair.
Wait, I guess. I'll come back to congestion in a minute. Well, I did mention Gateway, and I said, what's this matter to you? Why should you care about this?
You mentioned the Hudson Rail Tunnel,
No,
but
I said,
you didn't bring up anything about like funding for New Jersey Transit, which is a problem.
It's a problem, but it wasn't the budget speech, with all due respect. It was the state of the state. I said, why should you care about this? I said, because it will improve reliability on the entire rail system. That includes NJ Transit. Secondly, that it would create 70,000 union jobs, which is not necessarily specific to NJ Transit. And thirdly, I said, to give you one example, if you live in the Raritan Valley line, John Bramnick stood up and applauded. I said, I knew we'd bring Westfield into this. You get a one-seat ride out of this. It's a big deal. I mean, I would just say, Kay, with all due respect, do you remember what NJ Transit was like 6 years ago this month? It was a train wreck, literally. It wasn't safe. They hadn't hired enough engineers. We had an awful summer or two because of that. They had raised fares 38% in the previous administration. We haven't raised them a penny in this administration. It's a lot safer. We met a federal standard. It's more reliable. It's not perfect. And we've got the biggest issue right now is we had to regain credibility. Now we have to make sure their finances are in order, which we're going to be dealing with. And again, you'll hear some of the budget speech.
You're going to bring that up in February in the budget speech.
Perhaps.
Okay. I think there has been a push among many mass transit advocates for there to be a dedicated source of funding.
I've heard that from January 16th, 2000 and whatever that was, 18, when I first saw him.
Yeah. So, so I think, and there are concerns about $1 billion deficit that is supposed to arrive come 2026.
Yeah.
So I think there's some legit concerns there.
Let me
go ahead.
May I just say one thing?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't answer Kay on the congestion pricing.
Yeah.
This is not a conceptual issue. This is not like we're against reducing pollution. I would put our environmental record up over the past 6 years against any state in America. So this is not like I just got into office and I'm promising you a lot of things. We've done a lot of things. But here's the problem. There's two issues. One is they're ripping off Jersey commuters who in many cases, don't have the option to take the train or a bus. And secondly, they're displacing the pollution from Manhattan to northern Jersey. I don't know if you saw this. It might have come through your, I don't think it did. Josh Gottheimer just did a study. And it turns out he thinks that the MTA is raising $3.4 billion out of this plan when they only need $1 billion or $1 billion and change. My answer, which by the way, to Josh's credit was his, okay, that's good. Then give the Jersey folks a free ride. And you could do that and still afford what you need to fix the MTA. Don't fix it on our backs.
Well, but I think there is also a desire to get more cars off the streets. I mean, it's all about congestion, right?
That's why we're building the second rail tunnel. That is the I mean, other than the two old ones were built in 1910 or 11 and are damaged, but that's the point.
Yeah.
That's why we're building the Port Authority bus terminal. All of the above at long last. Those things have been sitting around forever. They're now finally getting done. when they get done and you got a 1-seat ride, I don't want to speak for John Bramnick or Shelley Brindle, the mayor of Westfield, but just take that one town. That's the issue in that town. They get a 1-seat ride, they're going to go to the moon. You won't be able to get near Westfield in the very best sense. And they're one of many towns you could say that about. So I share the same objective, but screwing New Jersey commuters financially to make that happen, as opposed to working with the federal government to get them to help fund 2 new rail tunnels, which would then allow the New Jersey commuter to go in and out of Manhattan with ease and not screw them financially. That to me is a better, with all due respect, a better formula.
Oh, so you're saying the money raised by the congestion tax should build another tunnel in
No.
addition to the one that's
No.
going to get built?
You know, one part of a solution to the congestion pricing would be is if we got some of the money back,
Oh, I see.
that's an element I'd like. I'm saying something different. MTA is fixing itself on the back of Jersey commuters. We're building the 3rd and 4th rail tunnel under the Hudson because of the federal government. That's not costing our commuters a dime. So we end up in the same place, taking cars off the road. One plan, the congestion pricing plan, does it by screwing New Jersey commuters in a big way, by the way, up to $15 a trip. The other plan, which will take longer, but will be essentially free of charge for that commuter, because all they're going to do is pay whatever they're going to pay for an NJ Transit train trip in and out of Manhattan. That to me is a far better, more equitable way to get people off the roads and onto trains.
Okay, I think our New York transportation reporter would love to have a conversation with you
Not-
about this, but we're going to leave that one
Not
there.
as much as I would love it.
Let's go back to the phones. We have Donna from Pennsauken on the line.
Hey, Donna.
Hi, Governor. Thank you for taking my call. If you hear an echo background, I got you on my radio.
No worries.
Wow. So I am a disabled Navy veteran. I came back to New Jersey. I originally hail from Lyndhurst, so I am familiar with North Jersey. My question for you has to do with the homeless and the situation for housing for them here in New Jersey. For veterans housing, we need to look to other states and other programs. They do the tiny homes, and getting somebody in a house makes such a difference to their livelihood and to actually break the cycle of the homelessness. And
Yep.
I want to know where we stand on that.
Donna, are you homeless yourself?
No, I am fortunate to own a home.
God bless you. And you said you're a Navy veteran?
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yes, I am.
God love you and bless you for your service to our country. By the way, you probably know this, but we are christening the USS New Jersey Virginia class submarine in April of this year, which is a big deal. I want to get, I can't, Jen, I can't make Dennis make all these calls, but I want to make sure somebody, maybe Aaron, Jen, and our veterans outreach team, we actually do a significant amount in terms of home ownership, making homes more affordable for vets. In fact, we had a vet with us, Eddie Freeman, in my State of the State yesterday, talking explicitly about his home in Marlton. And I will tell you, there's some really exciting stuff going on right now. This is not specific to veterans, although we do a lot, Donna, for veterans, especially on jobs, medical, healthcare, and homes. But I'm not sure, Nancy, if you've seen Raz Baraka in Newark has gotten like international press. He was in the Ledger today. They're doing just what Donna is doing, these small, I think they're 200 square foot modules.
Auxiliary dwelling units
Yeah,
that get built in people's backyards.
Yeah, and I think he's doing it sort of in for lack of a, like you would normally have had maybe a trailer park. This would be the modular units. The Economist wrote about the progress they're making. And I got our team going on this earlier today, Donna, ironically. But I think there's an enormous opportunity there, period, and specific to vets. But we have a long list of things we do for vets as it relates to a lot of other things, but housing in particular. And again, I'm going to ask Dennis, Jen, or Aaron or somebody on the vets team to reach out to Donna. And again, thank you for your service, Donna.
Thanks for the call, Donna. So we'll hear about money for tiny houses in the February budget address.
I can't. You're now obligating me to all these programs here.
And don't you think I'm going to ask you about it
Exactly.
after the address?
Yeah, we may have to cancel that show.
I think tiny houses are a great idea.
But seriously, it's a really effective, and we're not the only ones doing them. But let's amp that up.
I'm quickly running out of time here, but I want to try to squeeze in more calls and get to a few more questions. So let's go to the phones. We have Kristen in Sussex County on the line.
Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Governor Murphy. I'm a local social worker for the state. And
thank you for your service.
Thanks. 17 years, long time. I wanted to ask if there's going to be any additional funds specifically for trauma-based therapy for some of the more recent arrivals to our communities. I'm seeing it all the way out here in Sussex County. Young people, like we're hearing from our local schools that they need more Spanish-speaking social workers, liaisons. I'm hearing from local police too. I'm Child Protective Services, and so we have our hands in so many different institutions and different parts of the community, working community. And a lot of these folks are coming with, sadly, a lot of trauma. And during the pandemic, we had a lot of additional funds federally for mental health, and it has significantly been cut. And we've seen it, we saw it about a year ago, different programs slowly being rolled back. And it's really disheartening because it's not just the recent arrivals and the Spanish folks, but it's everybody. We've seen almost like a ricochet effect from the pandemic of kids disclosing things. And then now we additionally need more funds for these kids that we're coming upon in the fields that really need help. And then that'll prevent the cycle of abuse. It'll prevent the cycle of criminal behavior. Like it's trauma-based therapy in multilinguals. It's so vital, especially in New Jersey where we have such a high number.
Yep. Kristen, are they coming, the Spanish speakers presumably are coming from south of the border?
Yeah, we're seeing more and more up here. Yep. Even in Sussex County and Newton.
So we have done a ton on this over our time in office. In fact, when I was the chair of the National Governors Association, mental health, strengthening mental health among our kids was the initiative that I pursued. I think, Jen, maybe it's a combination, I think, of Christine Norbert Beyer and Sarah Edelman, I think, reaching out to Kristen. This is a great point. The multilingual element of this, there's really two issues you're raising. One is the funding isn't what it was when the feds, including the Trump administration, I have to say, and the Bidens backed the truck up. But secondly, you've got multilingual needs that you may not have had before. So both very good points. Again, I think per capita, we're probably at or near the head of the class of American states on monies that we put in and resources into mental health and learning loss and trauma. I just signed a bill, by the way, which is not Kristen's point, but I signed a bill to teach how to grieve in our schools, which is bipartisan supported. I think really smart. I don't, the folks who are with me don't think any state in America does that. Any event, Kristen, we'll get two of our cabinet members, one or both of them, to follow up with you. And again, I'm proud of what we've done and we do, but it's a very fair point. Thank you.
Kenny Burns, WHYY, more social media
there
questions.
We go. Actually, you did bring this up in the State of the State yesterday, boosting the literacy rates in the state.
Yep.
And Martha in Washington, she didn't say which county, but she's a high school librarian. She is asking, can you discuss the role that school librarians play in promoting literacy?
Oh, they're huge. By the way, how many Washington townships are there? 6?
There are a lot.
5 or 6, right? We'll have to. It'll be a mystery as to where Martha is. I'm going to be quick, just because I know the clock is not our friend. Jen, let's get somebody on Dennis's team in the ed piece to follow up. We'll give Dennis a break on this one. A big deal. I mean, libraries are going to play a huge deal on this.
I think you had a pretty good line in your speech yesterday
Oh,
about banning books.
Thank you so much. After all, reading books is better than banning books.
That was it.
Right? And I'll tell you something. It's sadly becoming a lost art. You can see with kids everywhere, including our own kids. So the answer, in short, Martha, and given the clock, librarians will play a big central role. I promise you. And again, Jen, we'll get somebody on the ed team to follow up with you.
And what exactly are you thinking about doing this year about literacy?
Phonetics was a big piece of this, and working with the legislators and districts to try to sort of put, if you will, steroids into that space. The majority leader, Senator Teresa Ruiz, was back and forth with me today. She is all in on this. And I wouldn't say a moonshot or a Marshall Plan, but it's clear we've got a gap. And if we don't get ahead of that gap, it's going to grow and not shrink. So that's the short answer.
Okay, so we're going to get in one more quick call that my producer really wants us to try to squeeze in. One more. We'll go to Paul in Hackettstown. I can pronounce that.
Go. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Governor.
Paul.
How are you, sir?
My question is, great. I had a question about the New Jersey First Act. Where do you stand on repealing it to allow out-of-state teachers to commute in to help us with the teacher shortage?
Oh, great question.
Good question, Paul. It's not one that I have really considered in any way. I mean, I love the fact that folks live in the Garden State, so I'm selfish about that, and I recognize that. And I recognize also, as we've discussed in this program, that housing costs are not getting any cheaper. I am been much more focused, Paul, on taking steps that both attract new blood into the profession and separately retain the folks who have been in the profession. And that's really been our double-barrel focus. I would suspect that will continue to be the case for the foreseeable future. And God knows I mentioned this in the speech yesterday, we need more nurses, healthcare workers generally, and we need more educators.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. So the shortage that Paul highlights is real.
Thanks for your call, Paul. And that's all the time we have. You've been listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WHYY, and WNYC. I'm Nancy Solomon. Thanks for listening.